Anyone who has bought into Perry Miniature's newest range of figures, those for the War of the Triple Alliance, will no doubt be very interested to hear of the release of this book, Borders of Blood, written by Brazilian Victor Baron and published by Caliver Books. Subtitled Wargaming the Paraguayan War 1864 to 1870, anyone vaguely familiar with this conflict, the largest ever in South America, will know it goes by a number of titles, the Paraguayan War and the War of the Triple Alliance being the two most common. Having established that these rules and the Perry Miniatures figure range dovetail very nicely, let's take a look inside this 72-page softback book. The basic necessities and nuances of the rules are presented to us immediately, and we are informed that the game uses D6 dice and action cards to provide random and characterful events. There then follows a 4-page summary of the conflict. It's clear from this that English isn't the author's first language, but as you make your way through the rules you will conclude that this isn't really a stumbling block to your learning. The rules proper begin on page 11, with an introduction to how a miniature army should be formed. It's worth lingering here to take in the information that A. we are dealing with 28mm figures, and B. an infantry battalion, representing around 500 men, should be formed of 24 miniatures, on 6 40x40mm bases, with 4 figures on each. Although not overtly stated, this amounts to each infantry figure being on a standard 20x20mm square base, with cavalry mounted on standard 25x40mm horse bases. The example photo on this page shows the figures mounted in movement trays, which is no doubt what most players will do when presenting their figures ready for a game of Borders of Blood. In the characteristics of battalions, squadrons and batteries chapter, we encounter several standard wargaming convention rules when it comes to troop qualities, i.e. elite, regular and recruit, and formation, line, column, march column, square and skirmish. Attack dice are also introduced at this point. These are assigned to a battalion of figures and used for carrying out actions during the game. Unsurprisingly, complete units of elite troops under the influence of a good commander will get the most action dice. Depleted units of recruits with no commander nearby will get the least number of action dice. Morale and damage points, aka hits, are also introduced at this stage. Infantry battalions can take 4 damage points before they are destroyed. In the turn, we get to the nub of what action dice are all about. Anyone familiar with DBM and its derivatives will be familiar with the system. It's akin to pips. Battalions and squadrons are assigned an action dice following an I go you go formula, with the number shown on the action dice translating to what number of actions that unit can take. A maximum of 6+ actions will allow the unit to take 2 moves and shoot, or recover morale and move. The most significant thing to highlight in the movement section is the speed at which units move, 12 inches being a standard infantry line move and 18 inches for cavalry, so that's pretty rapid movement, especially on a 6x4 table. Terrain and movement covers all the standard fare concerning reducing movement for difficult ground, etc., while some interesting conflict specifics are introduced in the form of dealing with the Paraguayan swamps, or esteros. Formations are covered over the next 2.5 pages, all familiar ground for any big battle wargamer. Confirming what any student of the Paraguayan War already knows, the melee combat chapter begins by telling us that melee weapons were used extensively in hand-to-hand combat. Bayonets, machetes, daggers and spears were issued to all battalions and made hand-to-hand extremely violent and deadly. Melee incorporates the well-established 2-throw of the dice system. The first throw to hit, the second to save. Modifiers come in the form of dice being added to the hand. At this point in the rules, there seems to be a glaring omission. There's no mention of how many dice are thrown by the attacker or defender before modifications to the attack dice are added, or at least not overtly. Useful examples of play are included throughout the book, and in the example under how melee combat works, it implies that players get 1 attack dice per group in the battalion. Unfortunately, the photo doesn't really help, as it does not match the text. We are therefore assuming 1 attack dice per group and pressing on regardless. It's frustrating to have to assume a rule, but there you are. Attack dice succeeds on a score of 4 to 6. and these are followed by saving rolls, or what the rules call protection rolls. These are also scored on 4 to 6. So the attacker has a pretty good chance of hitting, more than in many Wargames rules, and the defender has a pretty good chance of saving, again, more than in many Wargames rules. When successful hits become damage, they are recorded via dice or tokens being placed next to a unit, with a total of 4 damage taking out a group. The melee section concludes with some notes on unit facings and generals. Firing is the next section of the rules and begins with some interesting notes on the types of small arms used in the Paraguayan War. Firing is a very similar process to melee, and early in the firing section it is categorically stated that each group comprising the battalion or squadron add 1 die to their attack pool. Again, like hand-to-hand combat, modifications are made in the form of dice being added to or subtracted from the pool of those thrown to hit, and this is followed by a protection roll to save, a 4+ being the key number required on both occasions, as in hand-to-hand. It's worth noting gunfire ranges here. Your bog standard musket can fire a maximum of 20 inches, so that's comparable with black powder. Applying hits is done in the same way as in melee combat. This similarity between the two systems is quite striking. Can't think of many games where hand-to-hand and shooting are so similar. This will make for an interesting appraisal during play, i.e. the benefits of fisticuffs over firing. Artillery is covered over the next 6 pages, and we're going to rush through this fairly standard set of rules. Nothing particularly noteworthy in here. It uses the same attack dice systems as small arms fire. We should just point out that the maximum range of a smoothbore 12 pounder is 47 inches, again very close to the 48 inches of black powder. Oh, and rockets are covered in this section too. Morale testing, made with the roll of a d6, is covered on page 39, along with the rules for action cards. These are random cards handed out to and used by each player each turn. We have 2 pages dedicated to battle points, which provide a points per unit system for buying combat units. We then move on to historical characteristics of the armies. This is a welcome bit of Paraguayan War specific info, which helps you build armies based on the historical facts of the conflict, covering unit and weapon types, along with the quality of over 30 commanders from the 4 nations involved in the war. The rules historical tie-in continues into the next and we think most valuable section of the book, Army Organisation. Over the next 11 pages you will find diagrams of army structure, unit rating tables and some excellent Alan Perry uniform guides for the Paraguayan Army, Brazilian Army, Argentinian Army and Uruguayan Army. This really is an excellent section of the book, providing lots of tasty wargamer friendly information, plus inspirational photos of figures courtesy of Perry Miniatures. On page 55 we have some rules and suggestions for setting goals or objectives in your game, plus deployment and the most commonly ignored rules in wargaming, weather or climate. If you're the Paraguayan player you'll probably be keen to ignore them again here, as a roll of 11 or 12 will basically mean you've lost the game before you even begin. From here we're into the scenario section of the book. We have provided with 2. Firstly for the left flank action at the Battle of Tui Uti, the Waterloo of South America apparently. Secondly for the right flank action at the 1866 Battle of Curipiati. The book concludes with 2 pages of action cards, designed to be scanned and copied and add characterful random events to the game. An army roster sheet for tracking units and points, and finally a useful quick reference section. So there you have it. Borders of Blood, a well-presented set of wargames rules specifically for wargaming the Paraguayan War of 1864 to 1870, dovetailing almost exclusively with the War of Triple Alliance figure range by Perry Miniatures. Rule sets can either offer something so intriguing, inspiring or unique that they cause you to venture into a new period, think Saga, Shot Practice or Frostgrave, or they offer a service to gamers who are already into a period or conflict. Borders of Blood is definitely a solid entrant in the latter category. This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.